All right. It's now day number 13 of our reading through 1st and 2nd Samuel. Today we are at chapters number 25 and 26. Where we left off, David was doing the business of the king, protecting the people. Saul was doing the business of insanity, paranoia, chasing after David, neglecting his own people. But at the end of chapter 24, David has spared Saul's life. Saul's going to weep and inform David that he knows that David is a better man. It gives the indication that this bad is going to be over. And so now we go into chapter number 25, and we miss out on Saul here. There's a little interlude that's occurring. First, Samuel has died. There's hardly a remark about this. The narrator says very little. He has already been phased out of the story. One has to wonder now where he's been in all of this. We're not exactly sure. We knew he was getting older and less effective. We also have to wonder now, will Samuel's death make any difference? Is it setting the stage for some significant transition now in our story? Well, there is going to be some transition in the life of David, because David's at Carmel, and there's this man, Nabal. He's very wealthy, owns a lot, and David has been there and had a relationship with some of Nabal's people, and in a way where it benefited some of Nabal's people. Now, Nabal's not a good guy. We're taking a break from Saul, but we're not finding anybody better than Saul. He's very evil, but he's got a wife, Abigail, who's very wise. And so, here's an occasion. There's some bright flashing lights here. It's a woman who's got, in a sense here, more honor than a man. He's got the honor of the wealth, but she's got the honor because she's wise and beautiful, and he's harsh and he is evil. So David and his men, they are hungry. They're going to ask of Nabal's servants, hey, we've had good relationship before. Would you take care of us now? We need something to eat. They want help. Well, Nabal is going to respond with a certain arrogance. He says, we are in very unloyal times. Perhaps Nabal is a Saul sympathizer. We're not all of that sure. What we know is that Nabal disrespects David. And in that culture, disrespect, dishonoring language, that was an honor challenge. He acts as though he doesn't even know who David is. David's got no right to be asking anything. David is insulted. David is going to fight. But Abigail gets word of this, Nabal's wife. And so she's smart enough. She realizes that this is, you don't mess with David. If you're Goliath, you don't mess with David. If you are the lion and the bear who were coming on David's sheep when he was a young man, you don't mess with David. If you're the Philistines, you don't mess with David. If you're Saul, you don't mess with David. You really want to be on a path of lesser resistance here if you're Nabal and Abigail. Abigail gets this. She realizes this. You don't want to fight with David, so she's going to manage to take food out to David. She's going to humble herself and pour on the humility of her using language and gesture. She's going to admit fault on behalf of Nabal's household, apologize She's going to flatter David, pour on the flattering language, and it's going to work. That's what we call satisfaction. David, it was satisfaction that was made. David was going to kill Nabal, but he decides to let it go. When Abigail gets back, Nabal doesn't know where she's been. He's not concerned, because what is he doing? He's having a party. A party as though he was a king, the scripture says. However, here we're down in verse 36, verse 37, he's having a party as though he's a king, but kings are not good characters in 1 Samuel so far. We only have one example, and he's been a poor one. So I wonder if there's something intentional with that, because Nabal here is another poor character that David is having to encounter. So Abigail is not going to tell her husband Nabal what she's done until he sobers up the next day. She tells him the man has a stroke and dies. Well, of course, David feels validated. In fact, he feels enough of himself that he's going to take Abigail for a wife, for one of his wives. He's taken the king's daughter, and now he's taken this man's wife. Unfortunately, though, Abigail's not going to play, as far as at least what we read in Scripture, that significant of a role in the life of David. Unfortunately, it would be good to see her again. But what we do gather from all of this so far is not to get in David's way about anything at this point. So then we transition into chapter number 26, and we're going to see Saul again. His paranoia has returned, his vindictiveness. He's got to find David. It's an obsession. David's hiding. Saul's going to take his 3,000 men again, and while he's out looking for David when he should be handling the business of the kingdom, well, David's going to get a sneaky idea. He's going to sneak into the camp, go up to Saul, and his men want for David to take Saul's life. David has this chance one more time. David is very insistent and persistent that he's not going to put blood on his hands here. David's a man of war. They've sung that he kills his thousands. But unlike Saul, David shows restraint. He even though he was insulted by Nabal in the previous chapter, he could have killed Nabal, taken the food. He showed mercy there to Nabal, and God avenged David by way of that stroke, as way as a cultural reading of this. David shows restraint. Saul doesn't. He's going after David. David finds him asleep. Rather than acquiescing to the voice of his men who are around him saying, "Go ahead and take Saul's life now," instead, David is going to take the spear of Saul and his canteen, then go outside of the camp and call out to him, and they wake up, and he calls out Abner, one of Saul's men, and the protective guard, and lets them know they're doing a poor job. Once again, David is outwitting everybody, and he's affirming that he's not there to hurt Saul. He wants to be left alone. Saul is repentant. He's promissory. He's promising David, this thing is over. I'm ready to bury it. Once again gives the verbal affirmation. You are the good guy. You're going to be rewarded for all of this. And that's pretty much how we close chapter 26. It's getting a little tiresome at this point. Perhaps redundant. We're revisiting the same things with Saul over and over again. When this is being written, our narrator is making a point here between these two characters, and that's why we're reading this repetition. What's happening here is necessary to tell the story, and maybe we'll uncover more of that as we continue. But for now, we're staring down the end of this first book, and I'll catch you again on the next reading.